It's week 25 of the golfing calendar. And after a big few days of late nights and very early mornings watching the US Open, it's a sleep-deprived Nick O'Hern today at the Cathedral golf course in Victoria, and an equally sleep-deprived Mark Allen today in Canberra. So, if the tech works, let's get Talk Birdietome underway.
Now, we're normally doing this from Golf Australia headquarters, but we're all over the joint, so fingers crossed this works pretty well, because that was a fantastic major championship of golf. Nick, I know I've been watching you tweeting, I've been seeing little WhatsApp messages. I know you loved it as well.
I live for the majors. You know, it's so good. Having played in US Opens and knowing what it's like back nine on Sunday, and to have a chance, it's just such a cool, any major really is such a cool tournament. And I felt for Wyndham Clark. I mean, those last couple of holes, kind of knowing you needed to make 2 4s, and just happened to be a couple of the toughest holes on the golf course, and unbelievable how he held his nerve. But it was just, it was a fascinating day, to be honest. I mean, we started off, I was thinking Ricky Fowler. I just really liked the way he was composed. He had this kind of, that look about him. He was calm, relaxed, had a bit of belief going. Yeah, from the first hole, I mean, it almost turned into a bit of the Rory and Wyndham Clark show, didn't it? I mean, Rory, 4 days in a row, absolutely smoked that tee shot. I think he averaged about 375 to 380 on that first hole, turned it into a short par 4, and he got off to exactly the start he needed to and wanted to. And Clark's short game was just a standout for me, how he kept himself in the tournament over those 18 holes. Yes, there was some amazing golf in there, but he also hit some ordinary shots, and he made some key clutch up and downs. I mean, who do you want to talk about first, Mark? I mean, because we need to break this down.
No, let's talk about Wyndham Clark first, because I'm with you. The up and downs were as good as you would ever see when you're actually leading or one off or whatever, tied at the top of a leaderboard in a major championship with rock hard greens that you'd ever see. It's as simple as that. And I reckon there were 6 very, very good up and downs. And I'm putting the 17th hole, even though that was just a little simple chip and putt, I'm putting that in that bracket. But there were 6 that were as good as you will see. Now, which one was your favourite? I reckon is it the 5th little short hole where he took a driver, hit it in the long stuff, and somehow had the touch to hit that ball that wasn't sitting on the ground to 3 or 4 feet.
Oh, that was on the 6th hole, the par 4, the reachable one, right? Yeah, that was a beauty. Made a lovely up and down on the first for birdies. 30s on 1 and 6, 2 up and downs. But the standout has to be on 11, the par 3, where he hit it long and left, and he's got to hit this high flop shot, almost holds it, hits it to 3 or 4 feet. That was unbelievable. And this was sort of in a transitional part of the tournament. He was leading at that stage, but then all of a sudden he gets up on 12, where everyone's been hitting 3-woods and kind of laying back, and he just smokes driver. I mean, no hesitation. He spoke about it in his post-round interview. He took it out up over the tree, just hits this 20-yard cut into the middle of the fairway. And I just thought, right there and then, I thought, okay, this guy's not backing down. He's got this moxie about him, and he's trying to win it. He's not trying to, just hang on or anything like that. He was going after it, and that was so impressive. And then on 14, to hit that second shot there is just, he'll remember that for the rest of his life. And maybe that's our top 5, top 5 greatest shots in the US Open, because that was one of them, that's for sure. It was just an incredible 3-wood, about 280 yards, hit this 2-finger cut, as he called it, off the left-hand bunker. But again, that hole was really the turning point. Rory, you look at Rory McIlroy, and, he did say afterwards, it reminded him a bit of that Open Championship final round last year when Cam Smith shot lights out and Rory just couldn't seem to hold a putt. But, Rory what did he hit? 15 of 18 greens, and 2 of those he was just off the edge and he was putting. So really he almost hit every green. He had 34 putts. Longest putt he holed was a 7-footer for par, I think, on 16. The 2 par 5s are what cost him.
Yeah, the 3-putt on the 8th.
Well,
he just didn't need that.
Yeah, he hit 2 good shots, just short. Hit that putt, 4 feet short, misses that one. And then on 14, it'll be the turning point of the whole tournament, where Clark makes birdie. Rory just, the wedges, that did cost him, I think, today and this week. He just didn't quite hit the wedges close enough. And that one he will be regretting for a while. He got an interesting drop. There was a bit of comment on social media about the embedded ball, but fair play.
That's fair.
It was a drop. And when he got that drop, I thought, maybe he's going to chip this in. This has got 4 written all over it, but no, he didn't hit a great chip and then missed the putt for par, and it was almost tournament over at that point.
Yeah. Hey, before we talk about, because there's so much more, I mean, I want to talk about Ricky, the way he swung the club on the last day, Cam Smith, Minwoo Lee. I want to talk about that Gordon Sargent as well, because something happened to him on the 72nd hole that should never, ever, ever happen, but we'll get to that. But when Wyndham Clark, I heard some of the commentators, and I actually heard him talking about it, I think way back when he won at Quail Hollow. And there was a point in time when he was in college, in qualifying, he couldn't qualify at Oklahoma State. Now, I've seen players like this. At Texas Tech, this is way back in the 80s, you've got yourself a full ride, which is a full scholarship. At that stage, it was $30,000 a year to go to Texas Tech. And I saw players in tears because they'd bogeyed the last couple of holes and they'd missed another trip somewhere, wherever it might have been. And these guys were on full scholarships and walk-ons were beating them. So, we were going away with walk-ons. And I saw what it did to these guys, because the pressure of one not making the team when you're on full scholarship is enough. But then you know that 2 years ago, this coach that's coaching now got rid of kids because they couldn't play. And all of a sudden, their education that was being paid for was gone. And when I hear Wyndham Clark talk about those days, those dark days where he couldn't qualify at Oklahoma State. Now, as well, Nick, Oklahoma State is a PGA Tour machine. It just churns players out one after another. But even so, when you look at the way he played at Quail Hollow, the lead up to Quail Hollow, and just the guts that he showed with those up and downs all day today when the spotlight was really glaring on him, it's just hard to imagine that he couldn't qualify for his college team. I just can't imagine it.
Yeah, there's certainly something so far. Yeah, and you look at his results lately in his last 8 starts, 4 top 6s. I mean, he's been playing some incredible golf. There was a couple of moments where you go, this guy is pretty cool. I mean, that club twirl on the last hole yesterday in the 3rd round, that was just an epic.
That was incredible.
That was one of the best I've ever seen, where he stiffs it, hits the flag, makes birdie to get into the last group with Ricky. That was such a key moment, I thought. And then the other bizarre thing I saw today, and not too many pros do this, he gets up on the par 3 4th hole, and he just drops his ball on the ground and just kind of rolls it into a nice spot and hits a 5-iron. He didn't even tee the thing up. It was just unbelievable. It was as though he's just having a practice round with his mates. So when you see that, how comfortable he felt out there, and to his credit, he hasn't had a coach for the last 18 months. That's another amazing thing. He said after the round in the interview that he felt like he started to own his game. He could own his ball flight again, and since he doesn't have a coach, which is an incredible thing to say, and his caddy helps line him up and things like that. I'm not, the lining up of putts and that, I'm still a bit wary of that, and that's obviously they're not breaking any rules. They changed that rule a few years ago, but that for me is a bit off-putting. But his caddy did slow him down nicely in those key moments towards the end as well. John Ellis, he did a great job on his bag.
Now, you and I have been communicating on WhatsApp most of that last round, and you saw something in Rory's putting. He mentioned before he had 34 putts. I reckon you've seen it before. We know that Brad Faxon is his coach, but you haven't told me what you saw. I'm dying to know.
Well, I thought I might do the masterclass later on. I'm going to get out on the putting green later and just do it. But we can do it. But we can do an early masterclass.
Yeah, let's do an early masterclass. Absolutely.
Let's do it. Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I notice, I look at various things, and I've spoken about Rory's routine, and I think over the ball he takes on full shots 4 or 5 looks, and I'd love for him to cut that down to 2 looks, just be a bit more reactionary. But that's beside the point. On the putting, he is a bit more reactionary. I like it, but when he's over the ball, especially on longer putts, watch the way he rotates his head to look at the line. He doesn't rotate his head where his right ear goes under, it goes around.
Yes, I've noticed it too.
Yeah, and I've never seen a great putter do that with their head. I remember someone, it might have been Tom Watson years ago talking about it, or maybe Ben Crenshaw saying, no great putter ever rotates their head that way. It's very hard to see the line. So the way I think for Rory, a great thing for him to help him get out of that might be to lower his right shoulder at his setup. That'll tilt him down a little bit. I mean, an exaggerated viewpoint of that is Jack Nicklaus, the way he used to set up to really crouch over it and get that right ear low, and he's tilting in his head as he set up to the putts. But it's more about how you rotate your head while looking down the line. I think the way he rotates it, he doesn't see the line effectively. Whereas if you rotate it with your right ear going lower rather than staying at the same level as the left ear, especially on longer putts, I think you see the line so much better. And I'll throw a little masterclass video on our socials later on. But that's the one thing I've noticed with him. And the thing with Rory today is he didn't hit the ball badly. He didn't putt that badly. He didn't make anything. At the end of the day, he didn't hit it close enough, for sure. But there comes a point where you need to make that 12, 15, 18, 20 footer in US Opens or major championships to win.
You know, you spoke then about Rory, and I reckon I've seen young players that I've helped with their putting before do exactly the same thing. And what I think Rory is doing is he wants the view of the hole, and his head tilts that way, and he wants his eyes being straight so he can see the ball rolling. But what he doesn't understand is that doesn't help him get the ball started on the tracks. You know, I reckon if you are just focused on starting the ball on the tracks, it's almost impossible to get your head to go that way, because you're just seeing that line or seeing a spot that's in front of the hole. And if you're not so focused on the end result, if you're just focused on starting the ball on the tracks, I think it's much easier to get the head to do what you want the head to do. But it seems like Rory's up and wants to see where the putt
almost changes his, it almost makes his shoulders open up as he's looking at the line. He's sort of coming up and out of it as he's looking, in a way. I mean, it's not that dramatic a move. It's very, very slight. And it's just one of the little things I've seen him do all along. And I thought, but something doesn't look right here. And then the more I looked at it, and then today it just kind of went, yep, okay. He's not rotating his head in the right fashion, I don't think. I mean, again, he probably thinks he's doing it great in Faxon. I'm sure he's one of the best putters of all time. They're probably aware of it and they don't even worry about it. But that's just something I've picked up on, and it would be fascinating to get him rotating his head correctly. And as you say, Mark, just get that ball starting on the right line, because every now and then he just seems to come up and out of it a little bit. The left shoulder opens up and tends to miss it on the high side or the left side, basically, a lot.
Well, then you're relying on your hands. You're relying on your athleticism. And I've just written this down. You said being reactionary, and Wyndham Clark's caddy, he just kept on saying, "Go and be an athlete." You know, that was, I love that. When the caddy was talking, and it's funny, you know, I had to drive to the airport today, and I was listening to the radio commentary in my car from home to the airport. And I'm telling you, the radio commentary at the US Open was so good, because you got to hear what the caddies were saying all the time. And Wyndham Clark's caddy, who's played in a couple of US Opens himself, mind you, he kept on saying that. You know, it wasn't like a picking out a spot. It wasn't swing smooth. It was, come on, be an athlete. And I've never heard that a caddy say those things before, Nick, but it's very much what you preach, which is to be reactionary and don't worry about your swing so much.
Yeah, it's absolutely spot on. We've spoken about this before, where it's like a free throw shooter. You're at the line in basketball. You want to see the rim and react rather than stand there, look and think about it. And that's the hard part about golf, is because the ball is stationary. It's not moving. Every other sport, the ball moves. And in those other sports, the hardest part from a mental standpoint is when play stops, like a free throw or a set shot on goal in the AFL, or a punter or something like that in the NFL, and all that sort of thing. So, it's one of those things. But again, with all that, you know, with what I was talking about Rory with his putting, if he had just played 8 and 14, the 2 par 5s, 2 putt from the front of the green, hit his wedge on 14 and make par, he wins the golf tournament. So, gosh, he must be frustrated right now, that's for sure.
Hey, can we speak about Ricky Fowler as well? Now, I know he shot a 75, and we've spoken about his first shot, and I watched the first tee shot as well. And after watching Rory just bomb at 370 4 days straight on the first, or 3 days straight on the first, whatever his first tee shot was, it was different. You know, you just didn't know what was going on. And Butch Harmon's been coaching Ricky, and what I've noticed just from a million miles away is his shaft lines are getting a lot neater. underbush. And, the shaft goes up and comes down, and it kind of looks like it's doing the same thing. And that was happening rounds 1, 2, and 3. But round 4, I don't know what happened, but the shaft lines were all over the place again. It was old Ricky swing. And you fix it, you fix it, you fix it, you fix it. But when you were leading the US Open in the last round, do you trust it? And I just don't think, well, you could just see it. I mean, I reckon Ricky Fowler will go back and look at these swings and he'll go, oh, God, that's nothing like how I was swinging the first 3 days. So there's still a little bit of work to go, but I'll tell you what, there is life. There is light and life for Ricky Fowler. I think he's well and truly back now. Hopefully he doesn't get hung up on the 75 that he shot on the last day when you lead the tournament like a US Open.
Yeah, well, the best players that, they learn from these things, and he'll look back, go over the round and go, well, where were my mistakes today? How was I feeling? And as you point, he did it for the first 3 days really well. He executed nicely. First 3 days, he still made a lot of bogeys, but he made a lot of birdies. The difference today was he only made 2 birdies and he made 7 bogeys. He was 3 over through 6, and he was behind the 8 ball from the get-go. And if he'd have got off to a nice solid start, just, make 5 or 6 pars to begin, it would have probably been a different story. But it is Sunday of a US Open, and it does funny things to your biorhythms and the way you swing the golf club and how you go about that process. And then the other guy that, again, watching the grouping of Rory and Scheffler. Watching those two on the greens today, it was just like they're sword fighting out here. They're flushing the ball. Scheffler somehow missed everything and still finished third. It was the most bizarre round ever.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't even think Scheffler hit it that good. I don't think he hit it well, and I don't think he putted well, and yet he shot 70 in the last day and finished third.
It's crazy.
There's so much upside for what he's doing. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, all week, if he just putts average, he would have won this thing by 3 or 4. But every time I watched him today, he couldn't buy a putt, couldn't make anything. So it was, but it shows you how good the guy's playing. He hasn't finished outside the top 12 in his last, 16 or 17 starts now. It's insane golf, and he's on a run where things are going nicely. And if he happens to sort out the putting, which to him he doesn't think he's doing too much, but I think a nice little putter change might be the way to go. Just something different. Yeah. And when just put it away for a week or two. Just put it on notice. It's in the naughty corner for a little while, then bring it back out a little bit later. Those things happen. Speaking
about putters, well, if you're going to have a putter change right now, I mean, Wyndham and Ricky Fowler have got exactly the same putter. They copied that from Ricky's caddy. So just ridiculous. So if you're looking for a new putter, Scotty, you might have to get tailor-made to make yourself something like Wyndham and Rory had. Incredible. Yeah. Hey, let's talk about our Aussies too. Cam Smith, you were spot on. If he was ever going to win a US Open, this was the course he was going to win on, and his last round was terrific, wasn't it?
Oh, it was him and Minwoo Lee. I mean, they both shot 67s, 3 under, which is 3 under par, past 70. It looked for a little while when, I was thinking, okay, if he can just somehow birdie these last 3 holes, he might be in with a sniff here, and you would never put it past him the way he putts, but he just didn't quite hit the ball well enough, I don't think. Just missed. I mean, the fairways were generous. He hit the ball great coming down the stretch, but just through the middle part of the round, it was a little hard to follow. We didn't see much of Cam, unfortunately, or Minwoo. We'd only ever see him, when they're making a birdie putt or a nice putt for par, but that's... Minwoo's first top 5 in a major, which is awesome for him. Cam just keeps putting good rounds together, and look out for him at Hoylake, I think, coming up. And then the other guy who, non-Australian, but Tommy Fleetwood, that's 63. With a missed, what did he miss, a 4 or 5 footer on the last for a 62.
4-footer.
Yeah, that would have really got up Johnny Miller's nose, I reckon, then, because I think he still got up his nose because he beats Miller now for the only person who's had 63 on Sunday at a US Open twice. So Miller only did it once. But the thing with Johnny is he does have major championships and Fleetwood doesn't. But a hell of an effort to do that after last week at the Canadian Open as well.
Hey, you just said Minwoo Lee had a top 5 finish. Now, you know this better than most. That top 5 finish is very valuable, even though Minwoo's in the top 50. If he drops out of the top 50 with that top 5, he'll probably still get in all the majors next year, won't he?
He probably will, yeah. There are some categories where they go, okay, top, like at Augusta, I think it's now top 12 gets you into next year. used to be top 16. I would think the Open or the US Open could be top 6, gets you into the majors, things like that. So, but he'll, the way he's playing and how he performed, I thought was just so impressive for such a young man. His length this week was just incredible, some of the distances he was hitting it, but kind of felt a very Australian golf course for us Aussies. It was just a shame only 2 of them made the cut and played the weekend. But overall, I thought LACC just put up a great showing. They were talking 6 to 10 under par at the start of the week, and with the 8 under first rounds, everyone's going, hang on, what's going on here? But we just had to be patient. I felt they could have really firmed it up even a little bit more today. That would have been fun. But the greens were still holding. There were some pretty tough pins, though, like, what was it, the one on 17, trying to hit a long line into that downhill, things like that coming down the stretch. But overall, the course was just, I thought it was fantastic.
Well, I had it 3 in my top 5 US Open venues before we'd even played here, and I'm going to leave it at 3. But a couple of things have to happen. There has to be more people. It didn't feel like a raucous US Open crowd. Now, next time we have it at LACC, I think it's a great venue, and the golf course stacks up, and it's a different kind of US Open golf, which I absolutely loved. But somehow they've got to get more people in there because the players, it didn't feel like a US Open to a lot of them. And we know there's so many people in LA who would have loved to have gone and had a look, and you can park your car on the South Course, come across the bridge. You don't need to get a bus or anything. I was disappointed that, I think there was a limit, 22,000 per day. I think normally it's about 30, 35,000. At US Open. So that was disappointing. But yeah, LACC, it was an absolute belting place. And I want to go play. Like, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Let's go, Nick.
Let's go to that one, Riviera and Bel Air. They're the 3 that George Thomas designed over there. But I heard a rumour that a lot of the LACC members bought a lot of tickets so that they could probably keep some of the public off their exclusive golf club.
I can't believe that. If that's true, if LACC actually bought 10,000 tickets for themselves and never used them, I mean, come on, that's not what it's all about. And by the way, with the flyovers and everything, we all understand it now. And what a place. Anyway, it's on my list. I want to go and play LACC. Hey, we're going to take a break. That was a great first 9 holes. We've still got feedback, and we've got a top 5 that I've got to make now, the greatest ever US Open shots. And you've already done your masterclass, but I'm really looking forward to seeing it so many people can really understand. And then next time they see Rory doing it, they'll say, I saw that on Talk Birdie to me. Nick O'Hern was very good. Grab yourself a toasty and I'll see you on the 10th tee.
Well, this back 9 plays 2 shots harder, by the way, so we better come home strong.
Like the podcast? Oh, maybe tell a friend. Drop them a text or share it on your socials. This is Talk Birdie to Me with Nick O'Hern and Mark Allen.
Geez, I tell you, this 10th tee in Canberra is very, very cold. It is freezing here. How do people live here in Canberra, Nick? I'm telling you, I got off the plane. It was 6 degrees. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Ridiculous. Anyway, how is it at the Cathedral? How are you going?
Well, I'm about 10 minutes away from there. It's, cold and wet as well, probably about 5 degrees. So it might even be colder here, mate.
So you've already given us your masterclass. I've got a top 5 to get going, and it was the best shots ever hit in a US Open. And I've got to say, it's a pretty good one. I just did it in 2 minutes. It is pretty good. But we've got results that we want to get to soon. But Dan, we've also got some feedback, tweets to the editor.
Yeah, there's plenty of feedback today. We've got some good ones. So you want to read them out, and you guys can just you can defend yourselves as it may be.
Yes.
First one. Now, this is from David Ogren, who you might remember last week, Mark. You called him a mongrel.
You did.
He mightn't even know what a mongrel is there in West Texas.
Well, I thought it was harsh. Nick, I know, thought it was harsh. You obviously misbehaving. But David's written, I don't have the foggiest remembrance of this, and I'm not that smart. But if you come to Texas, the beers are on me.
How did he even know? How did he find that is what I want to know. I mean, you put that out on, Facebook, and somehow someone sent it to him and said, hey, have a look at this. You're a mongrel.
I reckon that.
So, mate. It's a globe.
Okay.
Yeah, I reckon they have.
Well, have you written back to him for me?
What do I look like, your personal assistant?
Well, I'm not on Facebook. I'll put a note down and we'll try and get him on the show. I'd love to talk to him about it.
Yeah, sounds good. Some feedback on the US Open here, guys. Shane Martin has said it's too easy for a US Open championship course, and the scores are showing it.
I'm guessing that was after day one, probably, when that one was sent through. But the USGA, they just have a knack for making it tougher as it goes along. And, we were calling 6 to 10 under, and what ended up winning 10 under, wasn't it?
10 under.
I thought the course just held up beautifully. And look, at the end of the day, if 20 under wins or 5 over wins, what does it really matter? You just want to identify the best player, as they say.
Tell me this, Nick, to that point of that feedback, if there was some rain at LA after day 2, and let's say day 2 and 3, for whatever reason it rained, it would have been a 20 under score.
Yeah, probably around 16, I'd say, something like that. Yeah, okay. For sure. It would have softened it up because you could tell the greens were a little browned off on the weekend. They certainly firmed them up. The one hole which kind of disappointed me that they were raving about was that short little 15th. They were going to play at 80 yards or something on the Saturday, rock hard. Players won't be able to stop it on there with a lob wedge, but yeah, it was still soft enough that they could. So I was really hoping for some carnage, but it never resulted.
It was a great hole. And by the way, did you notice 3 years ago they put in pure distinction greens, which were built in Australia, and that's incredible. So the pure distinction greens. How often, Nick, do you see a golf course in California without POA greens? So if the pure distinction can keep the POA out in California, then in my book, they are the answer.
Well, Pebble Beach, please put them in there. I've had 3-foot putts at Pebble on POA where you hit a good putt and it doesn't even come close to going in.
Yep.
Got some more feedback here, guys. Daniel Anderson has said, and I heard this too, what is it with the commentators on the TV coverage of the Open? Every time, if you were playing a drinking game and had to scull, every time they said the golf course is hitting back, you'd be smashed.
Yeah, look, the world feed got knocked around on social media this week. Look, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people love it. But for me, I don't want to hear the Wikipedia page of each player when you see them on the TV. There needs to be more about how to play the game and how to play this situation. That's just my view. The Wikipedia stuff, I hear it 15 times and I want to hear it 16.
It's nice to have it every once in a while, but yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? But anyway, but the golf course apparently did hit back, so I'm sure that person had a lot of beverages under their belt as well. But no, I don't like hearing that stuff. And the other word that was kept there's other two was marine layer and barranca. They were the
barranca. They went nuts with barranca.
Well, you guys forecast that last week too. Hey, speaking of giving someone a whack, Chris has had a whack at you, Marco.
Yes.
You were giving last week. You were giving some tips on who was going to do well and who was going to win.
Oh yeah, Justin Rose went well.
Chris has said. Hang on. Chris has said you had me at hello, Marco. After listening to Talk Birdie to me, so you've taken us down with you here. After listening to Talk Birdie to me, I immediately threw him into my top 20 multi, and I take full responsibility for it. I think you should too.
Yeah, I've already apologised to Chris on social media, but listen, I don't know what happened, but keep on looking at Justin Rose. He's swinging the club beautifully. Something good's going to happen with him. Maybe the British Open. We'll see him up there again.
He didn't make the cut, did he?
He shot 76 the first day and 68 the second day and missed the cut. I put $100 on him myself, so I'm disappointed.
Yeah, didn't he play with Xander? Was it Xander the first day? No, it was Ricky, and they shot 62 and he shoots 76. He must have felt like a handicapper. Yeah.
Got a comment from Jeff Vines here on Live PGA. The Saudis got what they wanted. They've got no use for Live anymore, and nor do they care.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to happen. I mean, I think there's still going to be a few Live-style events, and I wouldn't be surprised if Adelaide gets another one because it really worked quite well in Adelaide. I've said this before. I know people who went there, and they say it's the greatest sporting event they've ever been to in their lives. So I reckon you'll get a few where it works, but I think some of the other ones where it hasn't worked, I think they'll probably get a bigger field, a more standardised field, and I think you'll see many, many, many more spectators come out and play and watch.
Yeah, I hope they come down to Australia and keep getting the biggest players down here. The one thing that Liv has got right in that regard is they contracted to play for Live, so that means they have to go to their tournaments, whereas
That's right.
typically if you're a PGA Tour member, you're not contracted, you can go play wherever you want, which is typically why they don't like to travel overseas that much. So in that regard, they got it right. So let's see what happens in the schedule, because no one knows, and Jay's taking a bit of time off, so maybe when he comes back, we'll figure it all out.
Plenty more feedback, guys. I'll finish on just these two. One, this one from Sensing Twattery is replying or commenting on your masterclass on putting from last week, Marco.
Oh, okay.
And he said, can you show this to Adam Scott? He can hit every other shot in the bag without his head moving an inch until he's hit the ball, but he finds it impossible with a putter, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, well, it's funny. The masterclass that Nick gave Rory earlier in the show, I reckon he could just about give the same masterclass to Adam Scott. He's got I call it the snake head, because you know that rap move. It's the snake head instead of that way. So Adam Scott's a perpetrator as well.
Can you never do that move ever again, please?
Sorry, I apologise for that.
Thank you. Last bit of feedback here, guys, from Dane at Toyota. Just finished binge listening to every episode from the start. Absolutely loving the podcast, guys. Nick, I'm a fellow lefty, and I idolised you when I was a teenager when I took up the game and got the bug. I've got both your books, and I even do a pre-shot woggle. Mark, I'll be honest, I know nothing of your playing career outside of your stories in the podcast. Oh, that was hilarious. But I love your commentary and insight into the game on the Aussie tournaments whenever they're broadcast on CD and KO. Keep up the consistent episodes. I need my weekly fix to continue. That's from Dane.
Good idea, Dane.
I love it. I think the highlight of that was the woggle rather than the waggle from Dan. That was brilliant. So.
Yeah. No, you got to go back to the early 90s to have any idea what I was doing on a golf course, but that's a long time ago.
It's great stuff, Dane. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, Nick, it's time for other results. They've all just paled in insignificance, really, but come on, there's got to be a couple of good Aussies done something.
Well, yeah, there was a couple of good results that I'll talk about, and it was more just because I think the tournaments were quite fascinating. On the LPGA, the Maya LPGA Classic, Irish woman Leona Maguire shot a final round 64 for a two-shot win over Aria Jutanagan. That was a fantastic win for the Irish woman. But on the Aussie front, tied 13th for Minjee Lee. Tied 20th for Grace Kim, who shot a final round 65. So she's really plying her trade nicely over there in the US, got the win earlier. And the other two to make the cut on the Aussie front was Hannah Green and Steph Kuriaki, but they finished well back. One result I just wanted to talk about, because we were texting about it earlier, Mark, was the Corn Ferry Tour, the Wichita Open in Kansas. Ricky Castillo won in a three-way playoff. And you mentioned you were texting me about how good are these college guys. I mean, they're just amazing how they're coming out. But he actually defeated, in the playoff, three-way playoff with Kyle Jones, he defeated Adrien Dumont de Chassard. I think he's French. I'll have to check that one. But
yes, he is.
Adrien got his Corn Ferry Tour status from the PGA Tour University rankings. He was third, I think, on their rankings. So he gets a Corn Ferry Tour card. We know that Ludwig Aberg got a PGA Tour card, finishing number one. But Adrian won last week in his opening start on tour. So you talk about college ready. Ooh. And then he had a two-shot lead with 3 to go, makes 2 bogeys, gets into a playoff and loses to Ricky Castillo, who also just made his first start, I believe, on the Corn Ferry Tour, because he got conditional status from the university rankings. So the college system in America, folks, I tell you what, they are ready to play golf. And I just thought that was pretty cool how these two young guys have started their careers in dramatic fashion.
Just while you're on that, and a lot of people were talking about the rollback of the ball this week because of the length that, we saw Rory McIlroy and probably Minwoo Lee, will throw him in there, the way they were hitting the golf ball. And we've mentioned this before, it's not the current players that the USGA and the R&A are worried about. They know all the numbers and how fast the ball is coming off the club in college. So they're trying to protect golf courses from what is coming. This next wave of kids who have learnt from Tiger, who have learnt from Rory, and have been in the gym since they were 14 years old, are hitting the ball like you just can't believe. That Gordon Sargent, we spoke about him before, the way he swings the club, and when you look at him in his golf clothes, he looks like a high jumper to me. He's got these great big long legs, beautifully strong arms and shoulders, obviously flexible. And then when he swings the club, you go, how can anything possibly go wrong? And he's hitting the ball a kabillion miles. And that's just one of them. Now, all these other guys, some of these other guys have turned pro and are already winning on the Corn Ferry Tour. So that's why they want to roll the ball back.
Yeah, it's the next generation, is it? Because they're all just being taught nowadays to hit the ball as hard as you possibly can, get as much swing speed as you can, and we'll figure the rest out later. Even the college recruiting system, they're just looking a lot at driving distance stats now, and that's part of it for sure. But obviously in golf, the beauty of it is there are other aspects to the game. But if you're long these days, it certainly helps, and please let us roll back. Let us roll back the ball and also reduce the size of the driver. And I liked your little thing a while back. You said, Mark, what was it? A smaller tee as well.
Yeah, I pinched that from Nick Faldo. Nick Faldo's idea for when you get to the pros, you can't use the great big 4-inch tees or 8 centimetre tees. That one would work. I know that myself because I've done it myself on a TrackMan. You teed up really, really high and you teed up very, very low. The low tee gets the bottom of the club, and it takes 15 metres off one of my drives at 104 miles per hour club head speed. So I'm with Faldo on that one, and I reckon if they get smaller tees, they'll do what you want, Nick, which is a smaller club head size. Yeah. That'll happen as well. So
I'm impressed you're getting 104 mile an hour, by the way. That's cool. I'm just behind you, a couple of miles behind you.
It is time for the top 5, and this week it is the top 5 US Open golf shots in the history of this tournament. Well, as far as I can go back anyway. So it's got a little Australian lean to it.
Okay. I can only imagine.
It's a little Australian lean.
In my head, what I think it might be, but as in the top 5. But you've gone down the Aussie route. I like it.
Well, I've got a couple of Australians at 5 and 4 now. Jeff Ogilvy, his chip in on. What was it, the 16th hole? That 17. Doesn't make that 17. That doesn't make my list because that was a fluke when he coming out of that long golf. That's a fluke. But what he did on 18, when he had that chip shot at the front of that green, with all the nerves, knew he had to get up and down, just to flick that up and then make that beautiful little curler, the 4-footer down, hands of gold in my book. So that was absolutely brilliant. So Jeff Ogilvy for the chip shot is my number 5. Number 4, now this isn't one shot, but this is a ball striking round. David Graham, when he shot 67 on the last day, I think he won at Merion. He missed the first fairway by an inch, but I'm going to give it to him. And he hit every other green and every other fairway for the rest of the day. So it's not one shot, but it's shot-making brilliance. And to do that in the US Open.
You're changing the rules now, this top 5 here, Mark.
I know. It's my top 5. You just sit there and listen, okay? Now, number 3. It's one of the most famous pictures in golf. And there's a plaque at Merion again, and I think it's Ben Hogan hitting that. Mm-hmm. Some say 2-iron, some say 1-iron. I'm going to say it's a 2-iron. And just to nail that shot, get it on the green. Did he win in a playoff after that, or did he win outright?
Okay, so a couple of things about that picture. This is you won't believe this. It was a 1-iron number, first of all. And number 2, I have that picture at home.
Yeah, I bet. It was one of the greatest pictures of all time.
No. I have the original.
Yeah,
the one that used to hang in his office, wherever Ben Hogan, in Texas.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, when I was living in the US, I hope it's the original. This is what he's told me, and this is what's written on it or on the back of it. He bought it at an auction, raising money. It was a charity thing, and then I did a few things for him, and he knew I was a mad golfer, so he gave it to me.
Are you joking?
When I get back home, I've got to take a picture of it, and I'll show you. And I've got that picture.
Oh, that is ridiculous that you've got the picture that hung in Ben Hogan's office. That is
apparently
ridiculous. Number 2.
All right.
The last 2, it's funny, the first 3, they weren't at Merion. Yes, they were. Hogan, Merion, David Graham. Was he at Merion when he hit that?
I think it was. Yep.
And Jeff Ogilvy was winged foot.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So the last 2 are Pebble Beach. Pretty easy.
I know what's coming. But I'm going to have to say you missed a couple that I love. But anyway, keep going, mate.
Okay, well, you can throw your 2 cents in, but this is mine. Tom Watson's chip in at 17 at Pebble Beach. Incredible.
That's number 2?
That's my number 2.
Wow.
My number 1, it's the same hole, 17 at Pebble Beach. And it wasn't the back tees. It was the front tees, but it was such a windy day. Now, again, I don't know whether it was a 2-iron or a 1-iron, but Jack Nicklaus was a 1-iron.
It was a 1-iron.
Jack Nicklaus hitting a 1-iron that hit the stick and finished 1 inch from the hole at 17 was the greatest shot ever hit in US Open history.
Wow.
But anyway, have you got
That's a big call.
Dan, did you hear the protest siren? It sounds like Nick's got a couple he wants to try and throw in there.
No,
well, I think Nick should tell us the couple he wants to throw in, but I'd be keen to know, Nick, what, seeing as it's got an Aussie flavour, what shot you played in a US Open that you would think is your best shot ever in a US Open. I think that'd be interesting too.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, geez, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, that's for sure. It would have been one at Winged Foot when I had a good result there on the front 9 on the Sunday. I remember striping a long iron into this par 4, which was, I can't remember which hole it was, but no one was making birdie there, and I just flushed like a 3-iron to about 6 feet and knocked it in for birdie, and I was thinking I was the best player on the planet at that stage. But anyway, that's a very memorable one, but I just can't remember which hole. But anyway.
How long did that 3-iron go, Nick? Can you remember the meterage?
Well, I know, what did Wyndham Clark hit a 7-iron from 198 yards on the last hole today, and that's probably what I had with my 3-iron back then.
What about some of those?
Crazy.
Did you see Rory hit the 4-iron, 270 yards to the back of the green? And it wasn't even a hot 4-iron. It was a blade.
Yeah.
He hit a blade 4-iron, or maybe the tiniest little bit of help. 270 yards to the stick, and he hit it to the back of the green.
No,
just
that was
ridiculous.
Impressive. But that was a good top 5 mark. The only one I would add for myself might be Payne Stewart's putt on the final hole at Pinehurst, 1999. He had a lesson of wife Tracy Stewart just before it. She used to help him with his putting, and she said to him, "Payne, you got to keep that head still. You're not keeping your head still." And sure enough, he kept it all the way down, and with about 3 foot to go, he looked up, and the ball was going in. It was pretty cool.
That's Tracy Mike Ferguson's sister, an old
exactly, yeah,
Australian golfer.
Yeah, good friends with Tracy in the US. She just lived around the corner from us. My wife Alana actually she was a doubles partner in tennis. So a lovely lady. Best wishes to Tracy if she's listening anyway.
And Mike as well. Mike, I saw him last year. Mike, what a superstar human he is. Hey, just quickly on you hitting the ball, not as far as the other pros. I played with a couple of people on Sunday, Simon Ritchie, and also his son Harry Ritchie, and they told me that your wife Alana hits it miles.
Oh, she does.
Absolutely crushes it. They told me that she knocked it on the first. She drove the first at Cathedral. Is that right?
She does. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, from the forward tee, she knocks it on. So she gives it a rip. That's for sure.
Is she far behind you, Nick?
She's not far off. She's not far off, that's for sure. I'm getting a little bit worried, to be honest. She hits a tennis ball harder than I do, and she's getting closer in that regard. But once she figures the putting out, I think I might have my hands full.
Righto. Anyway, always great talking about the US Open. We've got the Women's PGA this week, which is great. We've got a Pebble Beach US Open coming up as well for the girls. So much happening in the world of golf, and it's always great to speak with you, Nick. And we'll talk to you next week.
Always a pleasure, Mark. Cheers.
Nick O'Hern and Mark Allen's podcast, Talk Birdie to Me, live today from Canberra and regional Victoria. We'd love you to share the podcast on your socials and tell a friend about the pod if you love it. And if you don't love it, lie. Talk Birdie to Me's executive producer is Dan Bradley at Kaizen Media.